Hello, welcome to the dollhouse. I am the doll, and today I am going to be talking about the one drop rule and why black people in America hold on to the one drop rule. The sons and daughters of the American enslaved at whatever percentage. And I say at whatever percentage because even 1%, according to the ideology of many, constitutes you being black. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why that is, even though we all know that that just doesn't make sense. I have an aunt who, she will be 81 in October. She is very clearly a mixed race woman. She has blonde hair and blue eyes. And she has had people ask her throughout her life, of course, well, what are you mixed with? And it's just been like an unspoken secret that it's with the, slave holders of her ancestors. That is what she's mixed with. But no one would ever say it. She would always say that she was Indian. Of course, now, things like 23andMe exist. So after she took a DNA test, she was shown to be 49.9% English. No one was really surprised by this, but even after the test results came back, she proudly proclaimed that she was still a black woman, not a mixed woman. And that's because her parents also identified as black, because they were the product of forced sex from their ancestors. The slaveholders, also their ancestors, forced themselves upon the mothers and grandmothers. The original deadbeat dads left people feeling disconnected from their heritage. So that's really probably the number one reason why multi-generationally mixed people and descendants of the American enslaved at whatever percentage will just identify as black, because they have a very tense connection to the deadbeat dads who did not claim them, did not give them special treatment, did not treat them on the level of their other legitimate children, and just overall left them to fend for themselves. So there's definitely a disconnect there. Their caretakers were the direct descendants of the enslaved, not the slave holders. So that's who they felt connected to, no matter how blonde or blue they were. Another reason why black people in America, or the children of the American enslaved, really embraced the one drop rule is because legally, until the 1960s, people with a drop of African heritage were prohibited from participating in society at full citizenship. They were second-class citizens, really. Nationwide, they were not treated the same everywhere. One drop would restrict your movement about these great United States tremendously. And there are generations of people that are still with us, still alive, who experienced this firsthand. So to acknowledge heritage connected to the people trying to restrict you from being a full citizen seems like being a traitor in some way. Acknowledging that they are connected to the people who have oppressed them seems like they're trying too hard to be something that is connected to power, or connected to that first-class citizen group. Now, those days are gone, but they're not that far gone. less than 70 years ago. That was the normal way of life. So, if you had that one drop, you were a second-class citizen, and there were distinct social restrictions on the way you moved about life. Another reason why Black people might hang on to the one-drop rule is the how they view you ideology, which is basically Black people feeling an automatic sense of racism coming from people in white society. They just feeling like white people are at a higher level still, just that internal the internal inferiority complex and wanting to pull other people down to their level by saying, white people will never accept you, so you are Black. That internal inferiority complex is another reason why the one-drop rule persists. But we're here to shed all of those things and move into a new age, a new way of thinking, even though the relatives that we have were indeed forcing themselves onto our ancestors in many cases. There may have been some kind of instances where that wasn't the case, but in 99.9% of the cases, it seems it would have been forced, unless perhaps it was paid, but mostly forced and then abandoned. Despite the origin of our connection to various European heritages in other parts of the world too, but to the slaveholders, our connection to them is very real despite the origin, and embracing the heritage does not have to connect with embracing the sins of our grandfathers. We can really look at them and condemn what they did while also acknowledging that the entirety of the culture was not evil. It produced us. It's just the reality of things. I watched something earlier that was interesting, and it was about a film star from the 1940s and 50s. Stage and film star, an actress named Eartha Kitt. Beautiful, legendary actress. She was the first Catwoman. She was just a phenomenal beauty. And she was a mixed race woman. And her father was white. And according to her Wikipedia page, her mother was half African and half, the daughter of an American enslaved woman, half enslaved woman, and half Cherokee. And her mother was purportedly forced into sex by either a plantation holder, or she was involved in sex with another local white man. So according to that, if her mother was half Cherokee and she was half Black and her dad was white, she would only be 25% Black. But because of the one drop rule, she lived her life as a Black woman. Well, Eartha Kitt had a child with a white man. And I wanted to just look a little bit into their story and comment.
Eartha Kitt, of course, had a legendary career in entertainment spanning over 6 decades. She was the first Black woman to play Catwoman in the iconic 60s Batman series and is immortalized in time for her iconic holiday song, Santa Baby, which has been streamed almost 200 million times on Spotify. But even with all of her success in Hollywood, Eartha Kitt considered her greatest achievement being a mom. She and her daughter Kit were incredibly close, and just a few months ago, their relationship took center stage when a TikTok post from Kit went massively viral when she felt compelled to defend her identity. Here's why. The photo you see, take a look, that's Eartha and her biological daughter Kit. But because of the very different skin tones throughout Kitt's life, people have questioned whether or not they were really related. Here's some of the highly, I think, insensitive and hurtful comments Kitt received after that TikTok post where she mentioned she was Eartha's daughter. Some people said, "I'm confused. Wasn't Eartha Kitt black? Oh my gosh, I'm shocked. You're white. Biological daughter, question mark. I cannot be the only one with this question." In the past, Kitt says she has typically chosen not to address these types of comments with a response. But after a lifetime of what she calls pain and scrutiny, this summer, she'd had it. It was finally her time to speak up.
All right, so let's just address the obvious. There are many of you who question whether I am truly my mother's biological child, which is hurtful and insulting, especially since, there's a lot of people out there who don't look the way we think they should look. We have this predetermined idea on how a multiracial human being should appear. I am my mother's biological child. I do look like my mother for people who are willing to see past the blonde hair and the light skin. What can I say? Genetics are a peculiar thing.
Please welcome Kitt Shapiro to the Tam Fam.
So Kitt Shapiro is Eartha Kitt's daughter, and she very clearly looks like what we would consider to be a white woman. She's a beautiful woman. She is multi-generationally mixed, and I noticed she was wearing an American flag earlier, and I commend that because she obviously very clearly understands the multi-generationally mixed nature of her self and embraces it.
You look beautiful, and you look like I was perusing social media, and all of a sudden I see Kitt Shapiro's going viral. And I think I said, I bet I know what it is. And I clicked on, and I saw you in that post there. What I didn't know, in the memoir you wrote, you say, there are people who insist that I have had plastic surgery in order to look more Caucasian.
That is something that is her business if she did. She may have gotten plastic surgery just to look better. In a lot of people's minds, having a nose job is something that people do to look more Caucasian. But reducing your nose does not have to mean that you want to look Caucasian. Big noses on faces generally throw off the proportions, period. So if you want to improve your appearance by decreasing the size of your nose, you don't have to equate that with being anti-black. Because there are lots of African people with very small, cute little noses. So let's just embrace people, whatever they decide to do with their looks. If she wanted to look more Caucasian, knowing that Caucasians have a privilege in society, no matter where it comes from, why wouldn't she want to embrace privilege? We shouldn't ignore the reality of privileges that we have, and we should lean into the privileges that we are afforded.
And pass white. I mean, these people were digging deep.
It is amazing. I mean, people hide behind, as we all know, we've all been victims of some type of trolling or nastiness online. And people they just assume that because you don't, as I mentioned in the TikTok, look the way they think you should look, then you can't possibly be who you say you are. Now, my mother only had one child, yeah. and this is what she got. Sorry, that's all. And she actually loved the fact that I was this this mutt, she said. She would say to me, you either break every rule or you fill every quota.
Oh.
She said, you're a walking United Nations. And I truly think that, you know, she was proud. She
Yeah.
was proud to be the parent of somebody that couldn't be easily identified because she herself had been so stereotyped and so pigeonholed because of her skin color, obviously. I am, to the other extreme, sometimes, you know, criticized because I'm not black enough. And
It's okay for her not to be black enough because she is not a black woman. If we're looking at her heritage, with her grandmother being a biracial Cherokee slash enslaved woman, and then her mother Eartha Kitt being half white, Eartha Kitt would have only been 25% black herself. And yes, granted, it gives her that little flavor, that little bit of spice, that little extra, but being black enough, like, this is not a black woman. This is the daughter of the American enslaved, yes. At a small percentage. At a very small percentage. The one-drop rule is what persists and makes people think that she's supposed to be Angela Davis or something. This is, for all intents and purposes, a white woman.
I can't help the way that I was born.
first-
My mother often talked about, you know,
what did
how
say?
she would always talk about the fact that, you know, how beautiful I was. She was my mother, let's remember that. And I am her only child. And how, you know, how wonderful it is to have, you know, this mixed race and how mixed race people are so much, you know, more interesting. No offense to everyone who's not, but I think we're all, look, there's one.
People who are not mixed might feel offended by anyone who is mixed having too much pride or saying that they're the most interesting. And that's just because of that inferiority complex that the people who are descendants of the American enslaved might feel because they still internalize whiteness as being a higher level of society than them, or a higher level of being.
One thing I think we should all be able to take a DNA test from birth, because we all would be realize how much more mixed up we are.
Henry
we
Louis
see that.
Gates?
Yes.
Oh boy.
Well, I had to pause it here because she mentioned that we should all be able to take a DNA test. It would surprise a lot of people to know how much European ancestry they have. And it would maybe help them to empathize with others who are multi-generationally mixed. It may help them also to feel connected to the American land, the American culture, by knowing that they have ancestry not only from the American enslaved, but also the slave holders. So their Americanness, it comes from both sides. So the point of this video is to recognize that the one-drop rule is archaic, that there are people who are multi-generationally mixed and are not only descendants of the American enslaved, but also the slave holders, as well as being mixed with other races on a more voluntary basis. And those mixtures are represented in varying percentages. And having one drop of African blood does not make you black. It's highly unlikely that a person with one drop of African blood in their heritage will have the experience of a phenotypically African person. It it's unfair to deny those parts of one's heritage. We are no longer denying parts of our heritage just because they showed up in an unconventional and horrific way in some instances. You know, we are not the sins of our forefathers, but we are a product of their DNA. So we should embrace ourselves and the full history of this great country. So I hope this makes sense and that it compels you to leave a comment, like the video, or subscribe to the channel. I'll be talking to you soon.